Hello everyone, welcome back to video tutorial on the module RTOS, that is Real-Time Operating System for Embedded System Design. So in previous video, we had gone through the first topic related to this module, that is Operating System Basics. So let us continue with the next topic, that is Types of Operating Systems. So types of operating systems. So depending upon the kernel and the services that are provided by the kernel and the purpose of computing system into which we are going to install or deploy the operating system, and depending upon type of computing system or type of host, and also depending upon what is the response requirement of the application we are going to execute using the operating system, we can classify operating systems into two broad categories. So one is general purpose operating system, that is GPOS, and one more is real time operating system, that is RTOS. Now let us go through the features of general purpose operating system, that is GPOS. Okay, usually GPOS is deployed in general computing system. So the host for general purpose operating system will be general computing system, which is capable of performing general operations. Okay, and in the kernel, in case of GPOS, will be more generalized. That is, the services provided by the kernel will be capable of executing some generic applications. Okay, so it is not specific for any application, for general applications. So the kernel is going to provide certain basic services which will be capable of executing general applications. Okay, and one more property of GPOS is non-deterministic behavior. So non-deterministic behavior means we cannot predict the time taken by the operating system to generate the output. Okay, so this is because unexpectedly at certain times what happens here is that there will be a random delay that gets injected into the application software. As a result, the response time taken by the operating system to generate the output will get increased. So that is why we say that general purpose operating system has non-deterministic behavior. Okay, and next, the same point, they are deployed in general computing systems where timing or deterministic behavior is not important. Okay, and the best example for the host where GPOS is installed is personal computers or desktops. Okay, so if you look into your laptops or PCs, mostly you will be having general purpose operating system. So example is what? Windows XP. Yes, so Windows XP or MS-DOS are some of the examples for general purpose operating systems. Okay, so that was about general purpose operating system. Now let us go through the features of real-time operating system, that is RTOS. So real-time implies deterministic timing behavior. So they are contradictory to GPOS. So here deterministic behavior can be seen in case of real-time operating system. So what is deterministic timing behavior means? The operating system or the services provided by the operating system will consume only known and expected amount of time. Okay, regardless of any services. Okay, so all the services will be executing in a known and fixed time duration. So that is why we say that RTOS are processing deterministic timing behavior. Okay, so RTOS implements policies and rules concerning time critical allocation of system resources. So how we are going to achieve deterministic timing behavior through RTOS means, so RTOS is going to implement some policies and rules which are going to give results which are time critical. Okay, so you can get the results in expected time. So the system resources, whatever the system resources are required for the application to generate an output in a fixed time is provided by the RTOS. Okay, And next is RTOS decides which application should run in which order and how much time must be allocated for each application. Okay, so RTOS is going to schedule one application after the application, and it is going to provide all the system resources required by that application, so that it is going to generate the output in the known amount of the time and fixed amount of the time. And then it is also going to decide which application should run for how much time. Okay, so that is also decided by real-time operating system. So one of the major characteristics of RTOS is predictable performance. So that forms the hallmark of RTOS. And this predictable performance is achieved through the policies and rules that are followed or implemented by the RTOS. Okay, so the examples for real-time operating systems are Windows CE, QNX, VxWorks, Micro C or OS2. Okay, so the next topic is real-time kernel. Okay, so if you remember, in previous video we had gone through features of conventional kernel. Yes, we know that kernel is the core of any operating system, and also we can call it as heart of operating system. So real-time kernel is the kernel what we find in real-time operating system. Okay, and when we compare real-time kernel with conventional kernel, we find that the real-time kernel is highly specialized compared to the conventional kernel, and it also contains only minimum set of services required for running the user applications or task. And if you look into the basic functions of real-time kernel, task or process management, task or process scheduling, task or process synchronization, error or exception handling, memory management, interrupt handling, and time management. So these are the basic functions of real-time kernel. So let us go through each of this in detail. So first is task or process management. So in case of task or process management service, it is going to deal with setting up the memory space for a task. So setting up the memory space for a task implies that allocation of required memory to the task. Okay, and then loading the task code into the memory space. So it should load the task code, that is the program or the code related to a task that should be executed next. That is loading the task code into the memory space. Then allocating the system resources. So for a particular task to be executed successfully, it requires certain system resources. So those things should be allocated, and that is taken care by task or process management service. And then setting up a task control block, that is TCB. Okay, and then termination and deletion of a task. So as I told, one of the function of task or process management service is setting up a task control block, that is TCB. So what is this TCB means? So TCB is going to hold all the information that is related to a particular task. So every task will be having its own TCB, task control block. Okay, so what are the information that is available in case of TCB means? So first is task ID. So task ID is nothing but task identification number. So majorly it will be useful for what? Identification of a task. So since there will be number of tasks, we need to identify a particular task. So that is done with the help of task ID. Next is task state. So task state, through this task state, we can know what is the state in which the currently executing task is there. Or we can know the states of different tasks through task state. Okay, so there are different states of a task like waiting state, running state, or ready state, or block state. So in which state the task is there, we can know through task state information. Next we have task type information. So this is going to define what is the type of the task. So the task can be either a hard real-time task or a soft real-time task, or it could be a background task, or it could be a foreground task. So if it is a hard real-time task, it should keep up the timing deadlines. So if a timing deadline is missed, then it will be an error or it will lead to the entire system to crash. Okay, and if it is a soft real-time task, so even if it misses timing deadlines, there will be only degradation in the performance, so it will not harm the system or the environment. And if it is a background task, the users will not be able to see what are the steps that are taking place, but it will be running in the background. And if it is a foreground task, so the users can see the steps that are being executed through the task. Okay, so like this. So what is the type of task will be indicated by task type. Next we are having task priority. So task priority will be coming into picture when there is multiple tasks. Okay, when multiple tasks are competing for the same system resources, in that case highest priority task will be given the access. Okay, next we are having task context pointer. Task context pointer is useful in case of context saving. So when you want to switch from one task to another task, okay, so there is something called as context switching, which involves context saving and context loading back. So all these things are taken place through task context pointer. Then we are having task memory pointers. So these are the pointers that are required for pointing to either code memory or data memory or stack memory of a task. And then there is something called task system resource pointers. So these are the pointers that are useful for pointing to a particular system resources that are accessed by the task. So here you've been coming across something like mutex or semaphores. So these are used as pointers for pointing to a particular system resource. Okay, and next you are having different task pointers. These are the task pointers for different TCBs of different tasks. So what is the current executing task? What is the preceding task? What is the succeeding task? Which are the tasks that are in waiting state? All these things are known through these task pointers. Okay, and again implementation of this TCB, that is task control block, is kernel dependent. So depending upon the type of kernel, the task control block implementation varies. Okay, so what are the functions of task management services? It's going to create a TCB for a task on creating a task. Once a task is created, so a TCB is also created. Then delete or remove TCB of task when the task is terminated or deleted. So once the task is deleted or terminated, its corresponding TCB should also be deleted, and that is done by task or process management service. Then it is going to read the TCB to get the state of task. So what is the current state of task? What is the current status of task can be known by reading its TCB, and that is done by task or process management. Then whatever the information related to task which is present in TCB, that should be periodically updated or dynamic updated when a task is being executed, and that is done by task or process management. Okay, and then modify TCB to change task priority dynamically. Suppose for your application the priority of a task should be changed dynamically, then that is also done with the help of task or process management service. Okay, so these are the functions of task or process management service in case of real-time kernel. And next service is task or process scheduling. So scheduling means it is going to allocate the CPU for a particular task. So task or process scheduling means, or it is going to deal with sharing of CPU and other system resources in case of multiple tasks. So a kernel service called scheduler handles task scheduling. So what is this scheduler means? It is nothing but an implementation of algorithm which is going to perform efficient and optimal scheduling of tasks to provide a deterministic behavior. So what should be the algorithm that should be followed so that the system resources can be optimally used and efficiently used so that a deterministic behavior can be achieved? So that is done with the help of scheduler. Okay. And next service is task or process synchronization. When there are multiple tasks that are being executed concurrently, so there should be synchronization between one task and the other task, and that is taken care by task or process synchronization. Yes, so when there are shared resources that need to be shared between multiple tasks, synchronization is very important so that deterministic results are achieved. So for that purpose, task or process synchronization is used or service is used. And next is error or exception handling. So it is going to deal with registering and handling the errors that are occurred or exceptions that are raised during the execution of task. So when you are executing a task, there could be number of interrupts that can occur. Either there could be some errors that are occurred or there could be some exceptions that are occurred. So all these things should be registered, and that is done through error or exception handling service. And also they should be served. And in what way it should be served? All those things are taken care by error or exception handling services. So some of the examples include insufficient memory, or there could be timeouts, or there could be deadlocks, or missing of deadlines, or any errors in the bus that is carrying the information or data, or divide by zero, or there could be some unknown instructions that are executed. So all those things will really lead to errors or exceptions. So what are the errors that are occurred or what are the exceptions that are raised must be registered, and then that should be handled, and that is taken care by error or exception handling services. These errors or exceptions can be of different level. Either they could be at the kernel level or at the task level. So if the error occurs at the kernel level, so the system performance of the system will be altered. So that should be taken care of. Or it could be at task level. So there may be any error with respect to execution of an application. In that case, it is called as task level. So examples, if you want to consider, deadlock is an example for kernel level error. So deadlock is going to occur in case of shared resource. So one task is going to hold the resource and it is not going to release it. So that the other task will be waiting for that resource. So as a result, deadlock condition occurs. Okay. And that is an example for kernel level. So as a result, the system resource required for an application to run will not be provided in time. And if you want to consider the example for task level, the best example is timeout. Okay. So as we know that RTOS is known for deterministic behavior. So you would have given a time for a particular task to complete, but the task is not completed in the predefined time. In that case, timeout error occurs. So this is related with respect to task. So there are two types of or two levels of errors or exceptions. One is kernel level and another is task level. And also the OS kernel gives the information in the form of system call. So in previous lecture I have explained what is API, application programming interface. Correct? Whenever an IO is required, there will be an IO call or IO request. So that is also taken care by error or exception handling services. So it can make use of watchdog timer for handling timeouts. So watchdog timer is an hardware timer which is going to raise an error when there is timeout. And the next service is memory management service. So we have also come across memory management in case of GPOS, okay, general purpose operating system, in previous lecture. So compared to that, memory management of RTOS is slightly different. Okay, so memory allocation time increases depending upon the block of memory that needs to be allocated and the state of allocated memory. So the time required for allocating the memory for a particular task depend upon its requirement of memory. What is the size of memory that is required by a particular task? Okay, and in case of RTOS is going to make use of block-based memory allocation technique. So instead of usual dynamic memory allocation that is used by GPOS. So I had explained what is dynamic memory allocation in case of general purpose operating system memory management service. So here RTOS is going to make use of block based memory allocation. So what is this means? RTOS kernel uses blocks of fixed size of dynamic memory, and this block is allocated to a task on need basis. So depending upon the requirement of the task, the particular block of memory will be allocated to that task, and these blocks are stored in free buffer queues. Okay, the memory will be divided into number of blocks, and these blocks will be stored in free buffer queues, and these blocks of memory will be allocated to a task on need basis. Okay, so these blocks of memory are nothing but fixed size dynamic memory, and in order to achieve predictable timing and to avoid timing overhead, RTOS allows tasks to access any memory blocks without any memory protection. So all the memory blocks which are in free buffer queues are accessible by all the tasks. They are not memory protected. So why this is done means in order to achieve predictable behavior. And few RTOS kernels implement virtual memory concept of memory allocation. So we have come across virtual memory concept wherein memory is allocated through demand paging. Yes, so that is also followed in case of few or very few RTOS. And so this virtual memory concept is followed only if secondary memory storage is supported by the operating system. So the next service is interrupt handling service. So what is this interrupt handling service means? It is going to deal with different types of interrupts. So it is going to deal with interrupts that are going to arise during the execution of a task. It is these interrupts that provide real-time behavior to the system. How means interrupts are going to inform the processor that an external device or an associated task requires an immediate attention of CPU. Suppose you are executing some application and it requires a particular input from a particular input device. So what it does, the application is going to generate an IO request. So that is nothing but an interrupt will be raised. So the processor will come to know that this application to continue its execution requires an input from so and so input device. Correct? So we say that interrupts provide real-time behavior to the system by indicating the processor that a particular application requires particular IO or data. Okay? So these interrupts which are raised can be of two types. Either they could be synchronous or asynchronous. Okay. So interrupts that occur in synchronization with the currently executing task are known as synchronous interrupts. So usually they will be software interrupts. And the example for such interrupts are divide by zero or error in memory segmentation and so on. So these synchronous interrupts will be handled through interrupt handlers which run in the same context of interrupting task. Okay, so there is no need of context switching from current task to any another task. Okay, since these interrupts are arised in synchronous with the currently executing task, so they will be served through interrupt handlers which are written in the context of the so and so currently executing task only. And the interrupts that occur at any point of execution of any task and are not in synchronous with the currently executing task. So these are the interrupts which are not related to currently executing task. So they are related to any other task and they are not in synchronous with the currently executing task. So they are called as what? Asynchronous interrupts. So these are usually generated by external devices that are connected to a system. Example for such is timer overflow interrupts or serial data reception and transmission interrupts and so on. And for handling these interrupts, the interrupt handler will be written as a separate task and it runs in a different context. Okay, so in order to serve the asynchronous interrupts, the interrupt handler will be written as a separate task and it is going to run in a separate context. So there we require something called as context switching. Okay, so the flow of execution shifts from current task to the interrupt handler task. So in that case we need to save the current status of the task that was running before the exception was raised, and then we need to switch to the interrupt handler. We have to serve that interrupt handler and then we have to come back to the main task which was previously executing, and it should start execution from the same point where it had left. So there we require context switching. Or one thing that you need to note here is that context switching is required in case of asynchronous interrupts and it is not required in case of synchronous interrupts. And also priority levels can be assigned to interrupts and each interrupts can be enabled and disabled individually. So providing the priority for different interrupts is also taken care by interrupt handling, and also enabling the interrupt. At what point of time what interrupt should be raised or enabled, and after execution which are the interrupts that should be disabled. All these are taken care by interrupt handling service. And lastly, most of the real-time operating system kernels are going to support or implement nested interrupt architecture. So what is this nested interrupt architecture means? So it is capable of interrupting an interrupt. So till now we have come across what is interrupts. So interrupts means a particular task will be executed. So there may be a requirement of something or there may be an error. As a result, an interrupt will be raised. That is interrupts. So what is interrupting an interrupt means? Suppose a particular task is being executed. So there may be some interrupt arised and you are going to serve those interrupt. Serving this interrupt will be through interrupt service routines, ISR. The code what you run or execute to serve an interrupt is called as ISR. So you'll be executing the ISR, and suppose there is one more interrupt that has raised with higher priority than the one that is being served now, then what happens is that the currently served interrupt will also be discarded and the newly arised interrupt with the higher priority will be served first. Okay, so that is called as nested interrupt architecture. Okay, that is interrupting an interrupt. So the next service is time management. So what is this time management service? So accurate time management is essentially for providing precise time reference to all applications. So yes, of course, so all the applications, especially in case of real-time operating system, whose behavior is deterministic and time critical. So we require an accurate timing reference, and this is provided by time management service. And this timing reference to the kernel is provided by an high resolution hardware chip which is called as real-time clock, RTC. Okay, so RTC is the hardware chip which is going to provide the timing reference to an RTOS kernel. Then, so the hardware timer is programmed to interrupt the processor or controller at a fixed interval, and this is referred as timer tick. So usually it varies in microseconds. So this timer tick varies in microseconds. If the timer tick interval is 1 microsecond, so system time register will reset in what time can be calculated. So here the system time register is of 32-bit. So what we are seeing in that formula, 2 to the power of 32 corresponds to 32 bits of timer register. So 2 to the power of 32 into 10 to the power of minus 6, that is timer tick interval, that is 1 microsecond, and divided by 24 into 60 into 60, converting it into days. Okay, so 2 to the power of 32 into 10 to the power of minus 6 by 24 into 60 into 60 will give 49700 into 10 to the power of minus 6 days. Okay, so this will be equal to what? 0.0497 days. So if you multiply this with hours, 24, so you are going to get as 1.19 hours. Okay, so if the timer tick interval is 1 microsecond. So for every 1.19 hours, the timer register gets resetted. Correct? So similarly, if the timer tick interval is 1 millisecond, when will be the system time register reset? So here again the same formula, 2 to the power of 32 into 10 to the power of minus 3, because the timer interval is 1 millisecond, by 24 into 60 into 60. So this is again 49700 into 10 to the power of minus 3 days. So this will be around 49.7 days. So approximately 50 days. So if the timer tick interval is 1 millisecond, in that case the system time register will reset for every 50 days. Okay. And what is the use of this timer tick means? So it can be used for saving the current context. So you'll be coming across context switching in case of multitasking. So in that case, in order to save the current time, so when the context switching took place, so timer tick can be used. And for incrementing the timer register by 1, so for every 1 timer tick, the timer, or what is that, system time register will be incremented by 1. Okay. And next is update the timers implemented in kernel. So kernel will be having separate timers, and those get implemented in correspondence or in synchronization with timer tick. Next is activate the periodic tasks which are in idle state. So usually there are certain tasks which are periodic. So they are going to take place after a particular timing duration. So that for that timing reference is given by timer tick. So it is going to activate the periodic task after a particular time duration. Then for invoking the scheduler and schedule the task again based on scheduling algorithm. So there are certain algorithms which perform time-based scheduling. Okay, in that case, timer tick is going to provide the timing reference for the scheduler to schedule the task after a particular time slot. Okay, and then delete all terminated tasks and associated data structures. So once the task completes its execution, so there will be a particular timing duration, and after that particular timing duration, the task will be deleted or terminated. And for that purpose, timing reference is given by this timer tick. Okay, and then load the context for the first task in the ready queue. And the first task from the ready queue should be loaded into the memory. So there should be a timing reference provided to that, and that is provided by timer tick. Okay, so these are the functions of time management service. So next topic is hard real-time system and soft real-time system. So real-time operating systems that strictly adhere to the timing constraints for a task are referred as hard real-time systems. So here the timing constraints are very important. So the real-time operating systems which are going to strictly follow the timing deadlines or timing constraints will be referred as hard real-time systems. Okay, so hard real-time systems must meet the deadlines without any slippage or missing. So if any deadline, that is timing deadline, is missed, so they may produce catastrophic results for hard real-time systems. It may include permanent data loss and irrecoverable damages to the system or user. So what is catastrophic means? So it may also lead to loss of lives. Okay, so very huge loss or huge damage for this hard real-time system itself, and also the users who are using those, and also to the environment where they are deployed. Okay, so such a damage is called as a catastrophic damage. So hard real-time systems emphasizes on a late answer is a wrong answer. So in case of hard real-time system, a late answer is treated as an error or a wrong answer. The answer may be correct, but since it has missed the timing deadline, such an answer or response will be treated as a wrong response or error. Okay, so example for hard real-time systems are airbag control system and anti-lock braking systems, what we find in case of automobiles. So you know what is airbag control system, right? So the airbag control system must be into the action and deploy the airbags when vehicles meet the severe accident. if you want to consider ideal condition, so the deployment of these airbags should be at zero time. So once the accident or some collision takes place, so the airbag should be deployed ideally in zero response time. So any delay in deployment of airbags makes the lives of the passenger in threat. So if this deadline is missed, so if it takes more time to open, so the airbags may open, but by then the passengers would have lost their lives. So that is why when the airbag deployment task is triggered, the currently executing task must be preempted. So whenever an accident or collision occurs, whatever may be the task that is taking place currently at that time of accident, that should be halted, and airbag deployment system must be triggered and must be brought into execution, and necessary IO systems should be made readily available. So all the input-output systems that are required for deployment of airbag should be readily available. So as a thumb rule, hard real-time system does not implement virtual memory model. So if you consider any hard real-time systems, they are not going to support virtual memory management. Why means we have come across virtual memory wherein memory allocation takes place through a technique called demand paging technique through swapping. So swapping takes place between the primary memory and the secondary memory, and this is going to consume time. So in order to avoid this time consumption, so it is fixed that no hard real-time systems support virtual memory management. Okay, and most of the hard real-time systems are automatic and does not contain a human in the loop, HITL. So most of the hard real-time systems will be fully automatic. They don't have any human interventions, right? So everything will be taken place automatically. That is why it says that no human in the loop. So in the loop of operation of an hard real-time system, nowhere there is human intervention. Okay. And next is soft real-time. So RTOS does not guarantee meeting deadlines, but offer the best effort to meet the deadlines, are referred as soft real-time systems. So here the timing deadlines are not met, but they try to meet this timing deadline as much as possible through best possible means. So what could be the best possible methods that should be adopted to meet these deadlines will be executed, but they may miss the timing deadlines. So this missing of timing deadlines is acceptable unless performance remains in quality of service level. So depends upon how much performance degradation takes place. So missing a timing deadline is acceptable as it is not going to damage the system, but the performance of the system will be degraded. But this degradation of the performance should be in the quality of service level. So it emphasizes on a late answer is an acceptable answer, but it could have done bit faster. Correct? So the late answer is also accepted. Late answer but correct answer is accepted, but it thinks that the answer could have been generated much faster. So more often human in the loop. So it is going to have human interventions. So in case of hard real-time systems, we have seen that human intervention is not there, whereas in case of soft real-time system, human in the loop is present. That is, human intervention in the operation of soft real-time system is present. So example is automatic teller machine, that is ATMs. Okay, and one more example we can consider is a audio or video playback system. So if there is any delay in playing an audio or video is acceptable. So that will not cause the damage of the system, or it will not cause the damage to any user, or it will not cause the damage to the environment where the audio system is deployed. In the similar lines, we can tell about ATMs. They would have provided all the information, but it is taking time to dispense the money. So that is not a big issue. Okay, it will not cause any damage. Only we can say that the performance of the ATM is degraded. Okay. So that completes the topic types of operating system. Okay. So we have seen types of operating system, that is general purpose operating system and real-time operating system, and we have seen the features of general purpose operating system and features of real-time operating system, and then we saw real-time kernel. Correct. So what are the different services that are provided by real-time kernel, and then we have seen what are hard real-time systems and soft real-time systems. So let me stop here for this video. So the remaining topics will be covered in the future videos. Let us meet in the next video. Till then, take care and goodbye.